Hello everyone. In today's session, we are going to discuss about principal crops and crop seasons in India. So basically, what are the principal crops and what are the crop seasons that we will discuss? In which, as you must have heard the terms about the season, Kharif, Rabi, and then there are the different kinds of the crops, or we can say there are the different types of the crops. So what we will do, let us see first what is the classification of the crop. The first one is agricultural classification. So I will just mention here agricultural. The first one is agricultural classification. Uh, Total, there are the three types. Second one is the classification based on crop seasons, and third one, that is classification which is based on irrigation requirement. So I'll just type here the third one, that is irrigation requirement. So the this is the classification irrigation requirements. Now we will discuss one by one. So let us start from the first one. So what we will do is we will discuss one by one. We will start from the agricultural classification. Now, okay, so the first one is agricultural classification. In agriculture classification, there are the different types. Here we can mention the first one, that field crops. So there are the different types of the field crops. So those field crops, there are the different examples as wheat, rice, maize, wheat, then rice, and maize. So these are the different examples of field crops. Then second subtype of this agriculture classification is the next one that we will write. The second one is commercial crops. So what are the commercial crops? Are basically, so like this commercial crops, oilseed crops, horticulture crops, plantation crops, and forage crops. So like that, there are the different types. We will discuss one by one, starting with the commercial crops. So in case of commercial crops, basically commercial crops can be the cash crops. So in cash crops, we always take the first name as a sugarcane. The sugarcane crop is the first one. Then cotton also comes under this cash crops. So these are the cash crops of the commercial crops. And second type is oilseed crops. So in case of oilseed, basically the crops through which we can produce oil, and there are the different examples. So in case of oilseed crops, the examples are mustard. The second example, we can take even groundnut. Even castor is also the example of this oilseed crops. So there are the different kinds of such crops which comes under the oil seed crops, through which we can produce oil. The next one is horticulture crops. So in case of horticultural crops, example can be whatever the fruits we do produce. Then second example can be all the vegetables. Even flowers also comes under these horticultural crops. So these are the examples of the horticultural crops. Then plantation crops. Mainly in case of when we see the plantation crops, the examples for the plantation crops are rubber is the first one. Even coconut, tea, coffee. All these are the examples which comes under this plantation crops. And the last one is forage crops. So whatever the fodder or grass that we generally provide for the animal, so the all these crops, or the grass we can say, comes under these forage crops. So like that, there are the different types of the crops which comes under the agriculture classification. When there is another type also we can make here, that is miscellaneous, in which aromatic or even the crops which are used for the medicinal purpose, that can come under this particular agricultural classification. Now after that we will discuss about the second one, that is crop seasons. Second classification is basically based on the crop seasons. So the first season which comes under this one is Kharif. So Kharif, Rabi. So like that there are the different seasons. So the first one is Kharif, or we can start with the Rabi also. So the first one is the Rabi season. Now in case of Rabi season, whatever the crops are there which are generally sown in the month of October, and the harvesting is done in the month of March. So we can mention here October to March, whatever the crops are there. The examples are like wheat, barley. So these are the examples of the Rabi crops. The second one is that we can mention for the second one as a Kharif crops. So in case of Kharif, okay, we'll write here first. So the second one is the Kharif crops. So in case of Kharif crops, so basically in the month of Jan or June, in the month of June or July, basically sowing is done, and these kinds of the crops are generally harvested in the month of October. So the example of Kharif season or the Kharif crop can be again rice, okay, which requires more amount of water. So based on the seasons, Rabi and Kharif, so these are the main types. Apart from these, there are a few more types also that we can add, like perennial. So we will just add here perennial crop. So next one is perennial crop. Perennial crop. Now in case of perennial, the crops generally which requires irrigation throughout the year. So it's called as perennial crops. So I'll just mention, so generally the irrigation requirement is throughout the year. So in case of so examples can be even sugarcane, that we can call it as a perennial. So throughout the year we need irrigation. So that's why I'll just mention that throughout the year irrigation requirement is there. The next one is 8 months crops. So from the type itself we can understand this is 8 months crops. So irrigation is generally needed, which is for 8 months crops. So cotton is the example for this 8-month crops. So like that, so these are the 4 types. We will just summarize again. The first one is Rabi, that is which has a season from October to March. So sowing is done in the month of October and harvesting is done in the month of March. So the first one is Rabi. Second one is I'll just take another one, another color, so that it will have more clarity. So the first one is Rabi, October to March. Second is Kharif, from June to October. The sowing is done in the month of June or July, and then harvesting is done in the month of October. The example can be the rice crop. Here this perennial, so perennial crops actually which has irrigation requirement throughout the year, and the example can be the rice crop. This is the 8 months crops which has the irrigation requirement for the 8 months, and the example can be the cotton. So like that, these are the this is the classification based on, or this is the type based on the crop season. So there are the 4 subtypes in the crop seasons. The next one is the irrigation requirement. So now we'll discuss about the irrigation requirement. Now in case of irrigation classification based on the irrigation requirement, there are mainly 2 types. The first type is about uh, dry crop. So the first one is the dry crop. Basically in this case the irrigation requirement is not there. Basically we need not these kinds of the crops can be grown even without irrigation. It means that whatever the rainfall is there, so through that rain only such a crops can be grown. In case of dry crops, we can take the example as a wheat, even barley. So these are the examples of the dry crop. Another type is wet crops. So in case of second one is a wet crop. So first we'll discuss what is meant by wet crop. So wet crop is basically the crop which cannot be grown without irrigation. It means that it is mandatory to provide the irrigation. So there are the many examples, but we can take sugarcane can be the one of the example. There is another terminology apart from this particular classification. So mainly these are the three types: agricultural classification, then classification based on crop seasons, and classification based on the irrigation requirement. The next terminology is there, which we can call it as a crop ratio. So that is one of the terminology which is related to these seasons and the crop types. So that's why I thought that I should include here. So basically, this crops ratio is nothing but the whatever it is the ratio of the area irrigated in case of Rabi season to the Kharif. So Rabi to the Kharif. Now, why this term is important, this crop ratio? Because it will give us the idea that if we calculate, because the irrigation requirement is different in case of Rabi and in case of Kharif. Basically, in case of Kharif, more water is required. So we should plant different kinds of the crops in available land or the area in such a way that discharge should be same throughout the year, and that's why this crops ratio term is important. So this is all about the crop ratio, principal crops and the crop seasons in India. Thank you.